Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Hey, it's Wendy. You're probably anxious to hear the second half of Mike's interview with Susan Masino, so I'll try to keep this quick. I just wanted to mention, first and foremost, that if you haven't already listened to part 1 of this interview, you can find it at episode 4 of See You on the Other Side. Next, I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to our podcast. It's brand new, and we've been celebrating by releasing a lot of episodes, 1 per day, since we launched it on Halloween. So thank you. Thanks for taking the time. I hope you like it. And if you do like it, it would be wonderful if you could leave us a little review on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever platform you listen to it on, or even just send us an email. But if you do leave us a review, please include your Twitter name or just your first name so we can give you a shout out in one of the upcoming episodes. So without further ado, here's Mike and Susan with some more cool stories about rockers and ghosts and, well, I won't ruin it all. Just enjoy.
Well, who would you say, that you've had a supernatural positive, that they came in, they lifted the room, they, who had a presence that you think might be even unearthly, that kind of sticks with you?
Oh God, that would be Bon Scott. He was an angel that was only here for a certain time, and now he's gone, and talked about every day. I mean, he was always, even though he drank, I never saw him, and I didn't spend days on end with him, but I never saw him so drunk that he couldn't talk, or, he was staggering around or anything like that. He just, he was a drinker, but he was always funny. He was always, when he walked into the room, you knew he was there. And he would always eat, the band played off of him. They definitely followed in his footsteps of how to be. He was friendly to everybody. He hung out with the roadies. He'd party with the fans after the show. And if he wasn't making you laugh, he wasn't happy. Okay. And he was a ray of light. He really was. And now that I've researched him and written about him, I didn't realize that he was having problems toward the end that I wish I would have known. He was lonely. He was having trouble. He was on the road for so many years. I mean, by the time he died, including the bands before AC/DC, he had been on the road for 13 years.
Wow.
So he was worn out. He was tired. And I didn't realize that because he didn't show that when he was around. When he walked in the room, oh my God, big smile, making a joke, trying to make you laugh, tripping over something, spilling something, whatever it took to make people laugh.
Well, it sounds like he was really a larger than life. He was larger than life. He wasn't that big of a guy, right? But yeah. His character was just, and his soul was, bigger than the room.
Oh, God, yeah. And even to this day, I just said this the other night, when I see AC/DC, I just saw them 4 times on the Black Ice tour, but, now it's been 4 years. But I hadn't seen him in 7 years since the Stiff Upper Lip tour, mm-hmm. And that's one of the first things we talk about is Bon. When I hang out with Angus and Malcolm, that's what we talk about is Bon, because everybody still misses him, and he's still a big part of the show. I mean, half of the songs they play, he wrote the lyrics to. And it's amazing, and what's so sweet, Brian Johnson's probably one of the biggest Scott fans on the planet. And he loves singing his songs, and at the end of the show when they do their encore, one of the songs is Highway to Hell, and they show a picture behind the band of the band with Bon. And he's always there. He's been gone for so many years, but he's always there, and everybody always talks about him.
And when you guys did when you did Let There Be Rock, and you did, and I'm sure you drew on your own experiences, and you must have interviewed 1,000 people coming up the story of AC/DC. Did you ever get any, stories that people had about Bon after he was gone? Any feelings, or, I mean, obviously he is well remembered by not only the band, but by everybody loves Bon Scott's songs. I don't know anybody that's like, AC/DC, forget it. But did you ever hear anything where they were like, well, we were recording this, like we felt Bon in the room, or, or anything, any paranormal stuff related to him?
Well, definitely. I mean, only do I have dreams about Bon. And people talk about him all the time. They do feel him when they record and when they're on tour. And Brian Johnson, who hasn't really talked about it till recently, he used to allude to it, but now he actually said that when they went down to the Bahamas to record Back in Black, and he had to write, the lyrics, and the songs were set, the titles were set, the music was ready, he had to come up with the lyrics, and he was terrified. And there was a lot of storms, there was a lot of thunderstorms down there, and he said one night he just sat up out of a dead sleep, just sat up and grabbed a bunch of paper and a pen and just wrote lyrics until they stopped coming. And he said that it was definitely Bon was there, making sure that things were taken care of.
Oh, and, wow.
Yeah, and even before I met the publishers that hired me to do the book, and I see Bon, not often, but here and there he comes into my dreams, and this was so vivid. One night I dreamed he was here. He came to my house, and we sat and we talked for hours, and we laughed and we joked, and it was just a really great dream. And when I woke up the next day, I felt really sad, because I'm like, God, that seems so real, and why now, and why did it have to feel that real? Because it was painful to realize it wasn't real. It was just a dream.
Right.
And the next day, John, my ex, called me from work, and I usually would stay up late and work, and this was before I had the book deal. I didn't even know about the book deal yet, and I couldn't remember what Bon would talk to me about, but now I'm pretty sure that's why he came to me to tell me to get ready for it. But John called me the next day, and he said, why did you leave that lamp on last night? And I said, what lamp? And there's this big lamp that's over by the couch that's by my desk, but I never use it because it's really bright, and I don't use those lights at night.
Sure.
And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, when I got up today to go to work, that lamp was on. And I've had that lamp for over 20 years, and it's never turned on by itself. So it was kind of, I laughed because it was Bon's way of saying, yeah, I was there. I was doubting it. And it was kind of like, yeah, I was there. And then when I look back now, it's like he did come to me during the writing of the book, too, because I was super overwhelmed by it.
Sure.
I covered 32 years at the time. I covered 32 years of history, and I literally broke it down to a week at a time to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And one night I totally had, like, a panic attack. I mean, we're a full-blown, like, 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't do this.
Well, that's 1,500 weeks. That's a good deal of history.
Yeah, that's a lot of history. And I had a total breakdown that night, and I went to bed, and I prayed to Bon. I said, you have got to help me. I need help. I need something. I need somebody to help me get through this. And he came to me in the dream that night, and we were in a kitchen in this house somewhere, and he was dancing around, and he was making fun of me, and he was saying, oh, Susie, he said, it's going to be just fine. He said, don't worry about it, and I said, I felt so bad that he had died, at 33, and he laughed, and he goes, oh, that was my time to go. He said, it's fine. Everybody's fine. Everybody's fine. Look at me. He said, I look good, don't I? And he just made me laugh. And the next day when I woke up, I honestly haven't had a panic attack like that since. I mean, he was there for me. And he does. He comes in and out. And
those are probably the most innocent nocturnal visits from Bon Scott ever.
Oh yeah, no. He and I are like brother and sister. He offered a few times, and I knew better to say no. I wanted to keep it on a professional level, you know.
Oh, that's great. And I could talk about AC/DC, and I have 1,000 questions for you about Hank Williams and you know, and because with the South and country music, there's always superstitions and curses and things like that. But I do want to talk about your book a little bit. For the last stuff on the secrets of the universe, I want to ask you about synchronicity, and if you had any tips for you know, how do you get yourself in the right place at the right time? Any tips or ideas or things that you found in your life that you found really useful for finding that synchronicity?
Well, you know, for one thing, you know, I do talk about in the second chapter, I think it's the second chapter, I don't even know, about your chakras and your energy, you know, your God energy that comes down through you, and which is a white light. And I think that you need to keep that open and keep that around you at all times, because we are electrical, you know, we are energy, you know, we are energy in a physical body. And the more you get in touch with that energy, I think it opens you up more to things. And like I said, I'm really good at like knowing when to do things, like maybe a phone call or a letter. I'll know what day to do it on. It'll be like, you know, well, not today, that's not a good day. And then, yep, today's the day to write that letter, or today is the day to pitch that book, or whatever. And I've always had that, and it's your gut instinct. It's like, you know, it comes from within. And, you know, when people ask me, like, how do you make decisions on things, this is another way to use this kind of energy, is when you have a choice of, like, A and B, you think about A and what does your stomach feel like? And then you think about B, what does your stomach feel like? And the one that feels lighter and feels less stressful or less scary, you go with that one. Because your inner self always guides you in the right direction, but you have to learn to listen to it. So a lot of people, you know, they get that stuff, they get those little things, and they just blow it off. You know, they're like, whatever, you know, nah, you know, that's silly. And I've literally had great, you know, amazing things happen to me because I've heard that voice say, you know, yeah, go make that call now, or yeah, apply for that job. Go ahead, apply for that job. You'll get that job if you apply for it. You know, things like that. And I love synchronicity. I love numbers. Numbers come up on license plates. They, you know, come up all over the place. I mean, it's almost comical. It's like almost in Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey,
right?
You know, where he's begging for a sign and he has a truck in front of him filled with signs, you know, road signs, and he doesn't notice it. He doesn't see it. There are signs all over, but people don't notice them. You know, like I'll be thinking of, you know, let's say I'll be thinking of some, you know, my friend who lives in England, and I'm out on the road driving somewhere, and I'm thinking about my friend, and I'm missing my friend, and pretty soon a big, you know, semi truck will go by with the word England on the side of it. And it's just kind of fun because the universe has a great sense of humor. And it shows you, or like when, you know, you feel like you're late or you're not doing the right thing at the right time, but then everything falls into place. You have to remember, like you pull up to that stop sign and your birthday is on a license plate right in front of you. And that's the universe saying you are right where you are at the right time. It's okay.
So what do you think is a maybe a decision you've made, or a moment you've had, or something that you've done where, you know, you were given, that you were talking about, that choice you make where your stomach feels one way versus your stomach feeling another, where you followed your gut? Like, what do you think is the biggest example of that? And you don't have to say it if it's in the book, so people can go to the book. But what do you think in your own life has been where you followed your gut, or are you in the right place at the right time? And if you weren't there at that specific moment, everything would have been different.
I think one of the, and this sounds kind of crazy, and I don't talk about it a lot.
That's all right. I love crazy.
Yeah, it involves a voice, actually. When John and I moved to New York City with a roommate in 1983, we were staying with friends until we could find an apartment. Now, we were looking for an apartment in Manhattan, and we had no idea what was a good part of town and what was a bad part of town. So I literally, got up early in the morning on Wednesdays. The Village Voice would come out, and that was the day that they would list all the apartments, and the good stuff would be gone within the day, okay? So I got up, I circled what I just read, went up and down, and circled what looked good, and we had about maybe 6 places to see that day. And we were in a rental truck, and we were in Manhattan traffic, and there was this apartment on the Upper West Side that was, up toward Harlem, and that, that's scary. That's 1980s, and
right.
Like I said, we had no idea what was a good place and what was a bad place. And we had an appointment for an apartment up there, and then we also had one down by Times Square. Now, at this time of the, New York City's history, Times Square was not the place you wanted to live in the 1980s. But the Upper West Side, it was right on the edge of Spanish Harlem, and that also was, intimidating. And we were going through an intersection, and we were going to blow off the appointment to the apartment on the Upper West Side. And I literally, this is the first time that I ever heard I think it's called clairaudience, where you actually hear somebody. And this guy in my head, in my right side of my head, screamed at me, no, come up and see this apartment. No, turn right. And John was literally turning left in the middle of a ton of traffic. And I just said, no, turn right. He said, I thought you said turn left. I said, no, turn right. We got to go see this other apartment. And he's like, well, I thought you said that was too far north. And I said, just do it. Just do it. We got to do it. And we went up there, and we met the most amazing people. We got an apartment on the Upper West Side with a doorman and laundry, and the people that owned the apartment lived 10 floors above us. It was a furnished apartment, and it would have been gone that day. I mean, it would have been snapped up immediately, and they took a chance on some kids from Wisconsin that didn't know where they were going.
Right.
And we got a great apartment, and then it even happened when we stopped, we were moving our stuff, and we stopped in at a friend who used to live in Madison. His name's Mark Kaufman, and he's in the Scandal video, Goodbye to You. He's the drummer.
Awesome.
Yeah, he lived there, and he was at Soundworks Recording Studio, which was one of the only 2 digital studios in New York City at the time, built in the basement of Studio 54 on West 54th Street.
Okay.
And we got to stop and say hello to him one day, and he said, come on down and check it out. You got to see this place. And I was messy. I mean, we were moving, and I wasn't, I didn't think I should go in. And he's like, no, I mean, when are you going to get a chance to come in here? You better come in and check it out. At the time, it was a $3,500 a day studio.
Wow.
People like Diana Ross and, Joe Cocker and, people like that. I mean, Harry Belafonte, those were the people that came in and recorded and mixed there. And I walked down the stairs, and the guy was on the phone, and I looked around the studio, and I said to myself, now this is the kind of job you want. This is what you really want. This is a place that you need to work at. And as I'm thinking this, the guy on the phone, who was an engineer who was filling in at the desk, says, no, the position hasn't been filled yet. I'm sure she's interested. She'll call you back. And he hung up, and I turned around and I said, do you have a job opening here? And he's like, well, yeah, we're looking for receptionists that can, do billing and do phones and stuff. Why? You interested? And I said, oh, yeah, I'm interested. It took me 2 weeks, but I got the job.
Oh,
and
wow.
If I wouldn't have gone in the studio because I felt all grubby and messy that day, that would have been a big life changer. But I did. and I went with my instinct, and I ended up getting the job, the apartment and the job. And that was all on gut instinct completely, because I really had no idea where I was going. I was terrified of New York. I got used to it quickly, but it was very scary when we first moved there.
Well, how old were you guys when you went to New York City?
I was 27.
Okay. So, I mean, a little bit of life experience, but still, I mean, most of it, obviously, if you grew up in the Sauk City area, was around, I mean, the Madison area, and Madison's great, but it's not that big.
Oh, yeah, no, I spent my whole life in Wisconsin, moving around Wisconsin, and had never lived in a big city like New York. I never had visited before or anything. Had no idea what I was getting into. And loved it.
So when you worked at the studio, did you ever get to see anybody famous or any cool songs that were recorded there or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. They mixed Steve Winwood's Roll With Me. They mixed that there. Diane Ross did Missing You there, her big hit. John Denver came in a couple times. He was a really good friend of the owner. Joe Cocker, I can't remember. Oh, my God, I want to say Civilized Man was mixed there. They did a lot more mixing than they did recording.
Sure. Well, digital,
Yeah, it was digital, yeah. But they did like the movie, I think it's called Beat Street. Harry Belafonte produced that. That was all recorded and mixed there. They even did the 1984 Olympics. They mixed all the music for that.
Oh.
It was, I mean, we had everybody in there. That was one job that I could not wait for the alarm to go off in the morning.
Well, that's awesome. Did you? Now you said in the basement of Studio 54, right?
Yes. Yep.
So, I mean, by 1983, was that place still hopping, or was it kind of at the end because the disco era was kind of faded out?
Yeah, actually, when I worked there, it was closed down, but then they did open it later on, and then it closed again. So, but when I worked there, it was closed. And they built this beautiful studio in the basement. And when I've read stories about what used to happen in the basement of Studio 54,
right?
I'm surprised I didn't see any ghosts down there. But
that's what I was going to say. I mean, being in that obviously there was a lot of energy and mental energy and all these kind of things based around that hub of the disco era. So if there are any feelings or you picked up anything or, saw the ghost of somebody snorting coke in the bathroom.
I didn't see that, but I mean, it was just an incredible place to be. Like I said, Diana Ross worked there for 2 weeks, so I got to know her, and, Joe Cocker came in, and I got to know John Denver. And
Does Joe Cocker talk like that, in real life?
Actually, yes. He was drinking at the time, and he came down the stairs one day with a Heineken. You had to have Heineken, we stocked up when he came in. He had a Heineken in each hand, and we kind of met on the stairway. So he did a jig around me and sang me a little song using my name, Susie. So he was like, Susie, 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 and he did a little dance around me. So it was very cute.
Oh, that's great. Not everybody gets a personal Joe Cocker performance.
No, not everybody, but I did.
And how long were you guys in New York City?
Almost 3 years. Yeah, almost 3 years. And then I actually had a dental thing that went wrong with a root canal that caused nerve damage, and that's why I moved home. Otherwise, I was determined to never leave New York, and now I go back for the book expos and at the end of May for my books and stuff, and I love New York City. I mean, it's just, to me, when I go there, I don't sleep because that's wasting time.
Right. There's so much to do, and there's so many people. And did you ever have any paranormal experiences while you guys were out there?
Not that, I had prophetic dreams again. I had very vivid dreams when I was in New York. And I think it was because of the energy. But mostly, real life scary stuff, not paranormal.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
People being shot in the subway, and people being mugged right in front of you, and it was the 1980s. I call that the Wild West days of New York.
It certainly was a different time. I mean, it really was when you'd go visit. I remember visiting when I was a kid a few times, and going now as compared to going 30 years ago, it's a completely different experience. And like you said, Times Square. I mean, Times Square used to be porno theaters. It wasn't this family friendly and somebody's dressed like Mickey Mouse and things. I mean, it is different.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally a different city. I mean, believe me, it's just sadly, and on the anniversary of 9/11, the city is completely different after that happened. I mean, when I went back in 2003, I was stunned by people. I was just out there last year, and I mean, people in the subway, they're talking, they're partying with each other. There was a girl sleeping with jewelry and a purse in her lap. And in 1980, she not only would have woke up without all her stuff, but she might not have woken up.
Right.
And it's so different. It's just it's a different city. At 9/11, how horrifying that day was, completely changed the city of New York.
I agree with you a lot there. Now, one last question. I know I've kept you over time, so thank you for hanging, Susan.
Oh, no, anytime, Mike.
But one last question. So what's the biggest thing that you've dreamed of that's come true? Like, so in your dreams, what clairvoyant or precognitive dream have you had that you're like, the biggest thing you think that you yourself are like, yeah, I dreamed that and that came true. I can't deny that. I can't even doubt it.
Okay, I have a perfect story for that.
Great.
When I see AC/DC in my dreams, whether it's one member or all of them, I write it down, and it always manifests. It sometimes is years out, but they always manifest. And I wrote in my dream journal back in, I believe, 2005, that I was at an outdoor stadium. I was talking to some of the band, and we were laughing at the tour manager because he was arguing with a roadie in Italian. So I was in Italy. And I always wanted to see them play in Europe. I mean, I used to be so jealous when I saw, like, the big stage set up with the big horns on, and how many people. And I thought, I'd never been to Europe before, and I always thought that was, like, at the top 10 of my list of what I wanted to do. Well, in 2010, I got an email early in the year, an email from a fan in Italy that says to me, AC/DC's playing in my hometown of Udine, which is in northern Italy, on May 19th, 2010. Would you come here for a book signing? And I said, well, yeah, I'd love to come there for a book signing, but I don't make that kind of money. And,
right.
And he said, well, let me, I don't either. He said, but let me see what I can do. And shout out to Mario Ramati, who is still a wonderful friend of mine. He went to the bookstore. He cleared the book signing. They loved it. They thought it would be a great idea. And he went to the promoters. They loved it. They thought it would be a great idea, but they, again, did not have the funds to do this. Well, one of the kids, we call him St. Lou, he was in his 20s at the time, he went to the Northern Tourism Bureau of Italy and talked to the lieutenant governor about bringing over this author to do a signing the day before AC/DC played and make a big deal out of it. And, because AC/DC on their Black Ice tour only played one city in Italy. And I found out later Italy has a lot of, like, sound restrictions and just lots of things. And they were flying in and out of Vienna that summer toward the end of the Black Ice tour. So they picked Udine to play in. It was the only city in Italy. So they were really, like, bragging it up. Like, we're so cool that, AC/DC's playing here. Well, sure enough, they paid for me. The Bureau of Tourism of Northern Italy paid my airfare, my hotel, all my food, and I had an entire week in Italy, saw the band play live, did radio, TV, or not TV, but newspaper articles, and just I had a blast, and I saw them on a bright, sunny day in Italy, exactly like what my dream showed me 5 years earlier.
That's an awesome story. I want to have dreams like that, Susan.
Well, like I said, every time I see AC/DC in my dreams, I write it down because it will manifest. And that's why I think, I do have a past life with Angus and Malcolm. I honestly believe that we were related in another life because they've always treated me like family from the first day I met them, and they still do.
Well, and your career has been very much connected to them.
Yes. Oh, God, they made my career. They made my career. I mean, I wouldn't have a career without AC/DC. I honestly don't think I would.
So
I give them all the credit. They are the talented ones.
Well,
I was lucky enough to be there.
Well, you're certainly talented too. You got 5 books out, and the latest book is The Secrets of the Universe, Universal Laws, Past Lives, Ghost Adventures, and more. And people can get that at SusanMasino.com. Where else can they get it at?
And they can get it at Amazon. On Amazon, it's in paperback and on Kindle.
Okay, so you can get it. You don't have to go to the bookstore, and you don't have to wait for it. You can get it from your Kindle next time you go to it.
Right away, and if you go to my website, all 5 books are on there, and my 6th book will be out next spring, the AC/DC FAQ book, everything you wanted to know about the world's true rock and roll band.
Awesome. Well, I'll look forward to reading it when it comes out, and thank you so much for your time, Susan. It's been a lot of fun. There's probably about 100 more things we could talk about, and so I'm going to save that, and we'll have to do another episode soon.
I would love to. Thank you so much, Mike. And anytime, call me anytime, as Bond would say.
Show notes for today's podcast can be found at othersidepodcast.com/5.
Since today's interview with Susan covered a lot more spooky memories from the 70s and 80s, here's Sunspot's most 70s classic rock sounding track, Grand Guignol.
Love the drama, you pay the road, and do anything to get my gold. And when you feel some, it's a horror show. You think I'm crazy, oh, you should know. There's always something wrong with you. Someone's always done something to you. Stop being such a huge asshole. Your big exaggeration always leads to a confrontation. This
thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at OthersidePodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.